With Nigeria's Petroleum Industry Act finally seeing the light of day, what opportunities are inherent for stakeholders to tap in and spur sustainable development and growth in Nigeria's oil and gas industry? Hello and welcome to this panel session from the 10th edition of the Practical Nigerian Content, organized by the Nigerian Content Development and Monitoring Board. I'm Ehi-Omoike. Over the next hour, we'll be looking at how to address the uncertainties in Nigeria's oil and gas sector. Also, stakeholders will discuss the growth levers and investment opportunities arising from the Petroleum Act.
Let me start first by thanking our president for passing the PIA. This PIA, for anybody, some of us that entered the industry more than 30 years ago, started hearing about the PIB 20-something years ago. And every stakeholder in the industry has been using the PIA either as an excuse or as justification for doing something or not doing something. So now, it's a very significant event for us in the industry. And that's why the theme of this conference is very, very apt. So when you look at the creation of the institutions, you'll find that just from the little we heard from the new appointees, you'll find that very credible professionals have been appointed to man the new institutions that will run the PIA. And signing a bill is one thing, creating the law, creating the institutions. But for implementation to be successful, you have to have the correct people. The correct people have to be there. That's one of the good things we've had with NCDMB. The topic is clear to all of us. And I won't ask Simbi a question. I'll just give him 3 minutes to give us a brief introduction of his views, of his vision, how he intends to marry the PIA into the Nigerian Content Act, and what lessons he has to share with the new implementers of the PIA.
The PIA, in my view, is one of those things that I think this administration has done excellently well that will go into the annals of history. Especially those of us who have been around the oil and gas industry for almost 30 years of my personal life has been spent around the oil and gas industry. And like Enna said, 20 of those years has been discussions around petroleum industry bill, to be or not to be. We have had instances where firm commitments were made, promises were made as to when that bill will be passed. It never happened. An example of part of what the situation that bill created in the industry, with all due respect to Shell here present and the MD of SNEPCO who is also here with us, Bonga Southwest was a project Shell started talking about almost 16 years ago. I recall in those days in the industry, we launched the tenders between USAN and Bonga Southwest on the same day. And as at then, we were a bit worried to say, will there be capacity in the world to be able to handle those two big projects? That was part of the discussion. But eventually, of course, USAN went on. Today, USAN is history, is producing. Bonga Southwest is still under discussion. Borrowing a leaf from that, my experiment, I remember anytime we sit down, in those days when I'm on the other side of the divide, to discuss Bonga Southwest, one of the greatest risks we saw that was signposted in the right-hand quadrant of our risk matrix was the uncertainty associated with the petroleum industry bill. So it went on for so many years. Suffice to say that till today, Bonga Southwest is still under discussion. But the reason why it continued to be under discussion was the uncertainty that was created because of the bill. Because investors were not certain that they were going to get their benefit if they invest in that project. Investors were not certain as to what will happen the next day when the law is passed, how will it will affect them. So that is a typical example of projects that never came to fruition. Now we talk about Bonga Southwest because it came to the fall during that period, but there are lots of other projects, be it in Chevron, be it in Exxon, be it also projects that NNPC itself thought about that needed to have come to increase our production at some point when we started dreaming about 4 million barrels per day. Be it projects that NAPIMS and their partner thought of that will come on stream to increase the economy of Nigeria and reinvigorate the oil and gas sector. All this didn't happen because they kept on kicking the can down the road because of the uncertainty that was created out of that bill. Today, the uncertainty, in my view, is gone.
So I was saying that the chairman of the chairman, OO as they call him, he doesn't need any introduction, so I won't waste your time. Please, Chairman, come in and talk to us about some of these sound bites we are now hearing. We're hearing a lot about energy transition, about climate change, about how all IOCs are changing their names to energy. Is it just by name? Or what is the difference? What's happening? How will it impact on the implementation of the PIA? How will it bring more opportunities to the country? How will it impact on our economy?
The energy transition is upon us. And it's something we all have to take extremely seriously, being fundamentally an energy country. Still, over 95% of our foreign exchange earnings still come out of this sector. So it's very important that as a people we take a lot of interest in it. I think the way it's sometimes played is almost like we are transiting tomorrow. Yes, the transition is upon us, but fossil fuels, particularly the gas element of it, will be with us for a long time. As a country, we are energy rich. We are very strong in the upstream of the spectrum, and we need the upstream to fund the transition into new energies. So that's why it's absolutely very important that the PIA has created very strong enabling conditions for us to be able to develop both our upstream and our midstream.
Yeah, so it's very nice that coming from you, that the gas has been addressed properly, because that's another area that we had a lot of excuses. So when the IOC says that gas has been addressed in the PIA, that makes us happy and comfortable. But let's hear from another IOC. So it wouldn't be like it's Shell that is saying that. Let's hear from an American company. And I think customers can come in here.
Let's look at it from the point of view of, what is required to make these things work in the industry. As a company, we believe that, first of all, transition to a new energy, simply put, is moving production as well as consumption from the sources that are not allowing for, from sources that are allowing so much for greenhouse gas emissions to those ones that are environmentally friendly. For us, we've done a lot of work and understand, like my friend has mentioned, Mr. Osage, that to do that, there has to be a transition. Transition for us here is gas. Gas is a major transition for us, and as a country, we have abundance of gas. And what we are doing in Chevron is to ensure that you have to power the existing economy. The world economy still has to be powered. So we are focusing on lower carbons, lower carbon intensity in our operations, while progressing close to the green energies to ensure that there's still power, there's still the energies required to power the economy of the world is still going on while we are moving into the green energy. Regarding what the PIA has done in terms of providing the right fiscal incentive for gas development, I would say this: a lot has been done, a lot more has to also be done. A lot more is required. So to you, my friend, Yes, a lot has been done with the PIA, but more has to be done. For example, in Chevron, for example, we have embarked on a lot of gas projects over the years to get us to where we are now. We are 95% reduce all our gas flares as part of that transition. But it requires a lot of more work to get us to where we want to be. We put in the Escravos gas plant, Escravos gas to liquid plant. We are involved with the West African gas plant. All of these things are kind of going into the gas business to get us into the decade of gas that has been a passion of the Minister of State for Petroleum. By 2030, for us to power our economy in Nigeria through the utilization of gas energy or gas resources. So I would say there are still some areas that needs to be taken care of. Areas around infrastructure is very, very important. It can do a lot in developing the gas in the country without the infrastructure. Areas around making sure we are deregulating the price in the industry. Extremely important. Also making sure that the legacy debts owed to the suppliers by the power companies. All those things have to be settled. In addition to in addition to the fiscal incentives that have been provided through the PIA. So I would say there's more to be done, and all of us have to put our hands together to make that work.
The focus is on the PIA, but the managing director can take opportunity and see whether, now that the PIA has been signed, whether they'll be able to do some of those things that are making the governor to be uncomfortable with them here. So please, can we call in Roberto Daniel, the managing director of NAOC? He's online.
Concerning the PIA, actually. Yeah, I mean, I want to join, of course, my colleague, Chevron. This has been a great achievement this year, actually, after so long, as you said. Of course, as industry, we've been working a lot with the authorities, between ourselves. We try to contribute to have a PIA which could really boost the investment in the country. And getting together the transition and the PIA, I believe that it's the right time, really, for Nigeria to have the PIA approved. Because, of course, things are getting more complicated in the industry. I mean, everybody knows that. Before the panel chair were asking, but is it the transition just talking, or it's happening? And yes, actually it is happening, and it is strongly happening, I would say. On the other side, as Mr. Ozagi was saying, this is something which will take time, for sure. It's not something which will happen immediately, and we will not invest in the oil and gas industry anymore. This industry will continue for decades, and especially for what you said, the gas, of course, which will be our fuel in transiting into the new technology. But de facto, the transition, new energy transition is happening. So I'm saying it's the right time to have a PIA, because not having clarity in the governance and in the rules of the game would have put Nigeria in a very difficult position in terms of competitiveness. Because, of course, as you can imagine, most of the IOCs and the industry are now selecting investment in a different way in terms of following much more strict boundaries. And probably one of the biggest thing which may deflect investment from one place to the other is the certainty of what will happen, the law, the regulation. So I really welcome, and I believe all my colleagues do as well, the PIA, because this will support us to be stronger with our headquarters, try to find investment for Nigeria. We always say with the other MDs that actually we spend a lot of time internally in our companies to try to get funds to be invested, not because our company don't want to invest in Nigeria, but just because the resources are limited and you need to choose. So there's always some kind of competition to try to find investment.
Thank you. I think we will stay. Yeah, please. I think it's wise for us to stay for the last speaker that is coming virtually. That is Victor Bamidele of Total.
Total Energies, we are one of the first to make bold intent to be a multi-energy company. Multi-energy meaning that we really embrace the totality of the transition to cleaner, to greener energy worldwide. So that's an ambition. We have an ambition, and I can state it clearly. We've spread it all over the place. That Total Energies globally we will be changing the indices or the proportion of fossil energy that we have in our energy mix progressively from now to 2050, where we expect to be carbon neutral. What does that mean? It means today, as I speak, Total Energies worldwide, we produce about 55% of our energy mix is oil today, with 40% as gas and 15%, 55 for oil, 40 for gas, and only 5% for electricity. So let's take a breather. So by 2030, what is our expectation? We expect that the oil mix, the proportion of oil in our mix should have gone down to 35%. The gas will have moved up from 40% to 50%, and that renewable energy, mostly electricity, will have gone up to 15%. That's 2030 horizon. And 2050 horizon, when everybody talks about the carbon neutral, we're talking about 40% of our renewable energy in the mix, 40%. So that is the real transition. And gas will maintain 40%, so the oil will be only 20% of the total energies energy mix in the next, say, 40 years or 30 years. So this is the landscape of Total Energies worldwide. And that perspective speaks volume in a global sense. But how does it affect us in Nigeria? What are we trying to do in Nigeria? Now, I can say that in the next 5 to 10 years, the overall energy demand is not likely to drop. So it's going to be increasing. So in fact, when you talk about changing energy mix, it does not mean a significant reduction in both oil and gas in the next couple of years. So everybody is trying to increase gas, and Total Energies is going to do that also. But we need oil. We still need oil. And if we really want to look at it, some countries in the world today still have significant amount of coal in the energy mix. We know coal is the dirtiest. Coal is the one that you don't desire. But no matter what forecast you look at today, you still see coal that is still there until 2030, 2040 for some people. So as Nigeria, I think we should be confident that we'll still, oil is still going to be very relevant. We need to move into gas because it's the major transition fuel. But everything within Nigeria is still very, very important. So what are we going to do in Nigeria, Total Energies? We're going to focus on both oil and gas in the next couple of years. Now, the focus is going to be critical. And I think my friend from now just explained it, that every project that we need to put into the stream now is going through a lot of competition, not only in terms of cost, but in terms of carbon footprint. So we need to make our projects to be carbon footprint reduced significantly, so lowest gas emission. And that's why for us in Total, we are really well positioned. And that's why I say it's a PIA for me, because I've significantly reduced the amount of carbon that we emit into the atmosphere in terms of flaring. So flaring in my perimeter is close to zero. It means when I'm connecting to existing infrastructure, I am not emitting more carbon dioxide, not significantly upsetting the global expectation. And as such, my projects, when I compare it with other projects in the group, in Total Energy's portfolio, I am at an advantage because I am doing less of carbon emission. That's for oil. For gas, look, we all know it, we're a country that needs a lot of gas. So we think, and we are very positive that with the passage of this bill, there will be a bigger demand for gas, even domestically. And I'm sure that the GMD has never rested. He has always been asking us to put all that we need to put in place to be able to supply domestic gas. And Bala is there, my very good friend. We're putting pressure on all the IOCs and putting pressure on all the producers to monetize gas. So I think if Nigeria can expand its domestic gas utilization, well, there's so much gas. There is no company that we have in Nigeria that doesn't have abundance of gas reserves. So we are going to partake in that, and we're going to be very involved in that.
Victor, I'm sorry, you have not helped.
So, sir, the question you put to me is
Victor,
to mention what
Victor, I would have given you more time if I even sensed that you were going where we want you to go. But be that as it may, I know that amongst all of you, you still have a partner that is a homeboy. The GED. Bala, you are GGM Nappings, but you are sitting on the GED's chair. So please, NCDMB would like to state after this meeting that this is what we took away from the practical, not the theoretical Nigerian content forum. This is a practical Nigerian content session. So please, if you need a small consultation amongst your people, please get the clearance, but we want to hear something tangible, something practical. I know the oil industry doesn't operate like kabu-kabu, but you've been talking about these things for years. And I think it's apt for a conference like this to articulate something that when ES is doing his scorecard, he will say for Practical Nigerian Content 10th anniversary, this was the theme, these were the discussions, this was the outcome. One liner. I don't envy you because, you know, the industry is in a flux, has been in a flux, and globally we are hearing about so many things that are happening around you, but that's the cap you're wearing. So please, if you can help us look at the issues around, I just dotted a few things here. There are oil pricing issues, there's OPEC politics, there is the difficult COVID and their new variants. There's the deregulation that is coming up when the price of fuel is, we don't even know where it's going to land. There's insufficient work for it. Many of the companies here have built capacity. For years, they have not gotten any work. Then there is the declaration by government that this is a decade for gas. And then you have the bid rounds, all sorts of initiatives, but the opportunities will come from new FIDs. Where are those FIDs going to come from?
I think the topic is about what are the levers that we can pull together to create investment opportunity in our space. And a lot have been said. The enablers of this value chain is obviously the upstreams. And if you step back to 20 years ago, I think precisely in the year of 2000, Just look at the investment inflow into this country. The FDL, foreign direct investment that is coming, whether you look at the World Bank data or whatever data, CBN, you see an interesting perspective. From 1997, 1998, 1999, when we FID Bonga, you see investment flow going up. From year 2000, you see it coming down very, very low and remain down up until Antikoro appeared in 2020. We're seeing a trend now that is going to go up. The question is what happened? And I think the answer is not far-fetched. We saw the seed of uncertainty in this country. And that uncertainty was because we said, good intention though, we want to revamp our laws, we want to renew it, want to create clarity around the sector. Under the OGIC, then Oil and Gas Implementation Committee, for which, if I remember, Oguagu played a big role on it. And so we set to modernize the law to create what we call then petroleum industry bills. And from that time till just a few months ago, that uncertainty remained with us. What you have heard so far and what you know is that investment and uncertainty never mix. And so our number one problem is what I call the PIB, which we have successfully, with the support of the Honorable Minister of State, the GMD, now have it and flow, thanks to the Mr. President accent. So we have cleaned that. The second issue that also doesn't mix with investment is security. We know our space and the security vulnerability. That also created a challenge. I'm glad to say that a lot of collaboration is going on, and there's significant improvement, and we hope to see more and more improvement by deployment of technology, which again presents significant opportunity for local content. And we had some of the PII, some of the things that we've signed today. So security is another issue. Lastly, we all want to be competitive. We want the country to be competitive. We want you as individual company to be competitive. To be competitive means you have to manage your cost. We do know that Nigerian upstream space is very non-competitive. So cost was an issue. And therefore, the mantra in the upstream space is what we call redefinition of PSC. Instead of production sharing contract, to say is the PIB, now PIA, the security, and the cost. This trinity of issues, once they were not addressed, you can say bye-bye to investment. And what the leadership does, including what Simbi and Co did, was to try to eliminate these issues. And a lot have been done. We have about new COP fighting costs so that the cost didn't fight us. Security is being worked away. PIA is now in place. So good enough. Because of the PIA that has worked away, and it has brought clarity around the various sectors, whether it's on the minister, the commission, the authority, the NNPC, or the funds. Today we have clarity over the stakeholders' role. And what does that mean? That means operators, including service contractors, can now see clearly what they should do and where to get it done. And some of these are the opportunity that we now see. What it means is that we have to be ready to compete with the world. And to compete with the world, we have to see what exactly the world presents to us. Today, the world is being confronted. When I say the world, I'm talking about the upstream world, is being confronted with what I call the 3 E's. We have the issue of energy transition. Everybody has spoken about it. We do know that if we continue to implement, move to a low-carbon alternatives, in the way we are going, very imprudent, we are going to crash. But whether we go ahead on that speed or not, we have already created a monster. A monster is that we now have finance activists, investor activists, that has come into the space to create the second E, what I call energy investment. The energy investment has now been attacked and will continue to be attacked into the fossil industry. Investment capital is now very, very discriminatory against fossil fuel. But not only discriminatory against fossil fuel, the investment capital has become more and more impatient Everybody wants to invest today and get the money tomorrow. Nobody wants to invest and wait for 10 years. But for some of you who know the upstream space, it's not a day job. You invest today, wait for 10 years to get the money. Nobody is ready to present his capital to do. These are the two issues that created an impediment to investment. Number three, the consequence of the way we are running the ET, energy transition, and the crunching on the finance and investment, it has now created a new monster called energy crisis across the globe. We've seen what is happening to gas for the first time. I've never contemplated in my close to 30 years of work that we will sell an MMBTU of gas at $60. It's crazy. Nobody will think about that. That's equivalent to almost $400 per barrel when you do per barrel equivalent. Are we going to see anything normal? We don't know. We don't know because it's a supply and demand function. And because the supply is being attacked by lack of investment, it means we are only building short supply against tomorrow. And as long as short supply comes, we are not going to get that energy crisis. The nexus of these three is brought about significant opportunities for us in Nigeria. And one of those is that how else can we fund our projects? Can we collaborate? Can we form consortium? Can we move away from middlemanship and womanship and go to critical deliveries? And then lastly, we need to be able to be in a state of compliance. We always like to cut corners. I can tell you with the PIA, if you want to cut corners, you'll be in trouble. So compliance is critical. If you do all these four, it will help us to be competitive.
FID.
And that competitiveness would enable the FIDs. Where the FIDs are coming, we all know in these industries, the project that we were all rushing up, a lot of you are working on several A-class projects. I know Victor doesn't want to say it, but we know about ProWay. ProWay was suspended. Nobody from ExxonMobil, but you know about OOO. OOO was suspended. The person sitting before me and the one I'm looking at, they suspended Banga North and Banga Southwest. My brother doesn't want to do the Agbami gas project. Now, here is the trend. With all the collaboration we have done, with the PIA in place, with the resolution of the dispute that we're almost there,
fantastic.
These are the FID candidates. And I assure you, significant of this project I've listed are going to be FID in 2022.
Come on. Now that's good. Thank you, GD. I'm thanking you on behalf of the conference, but more importantly, on behalf of your partners, because you just saved them a lot of trouble. I don't know how they would have managed to leave this hall if you hadn't done what you have done. So please, I will give the ES another 3 minutes, knowing full well that he cannot put you back to sleep. But he will talk around some of the issues that maybe we haven't covered in the 5 areas. Yes.
By the time we gather here next year for PNC, you're going to ask him the question to say, GGM, where are those FIDs that you promised? And I'm sure he meant every bit of it in terms of looking at the opportunity that the PIA brings to bear with regards to how we move forward in the industry. And I'm sure when he's saying this, he also has at the back of his mind how NNPC itself will transit eventually to NNPC Limited. Because I think that is the point we probably have not gotten. It's not, from what I understand and what I read from the PIA, it's going to be a limited liability company. What that means is that all that today we demand from IOCs as limited liability companies, we are going to demand the same of NNPC. And part of what I believe the PIA wants to do is to make NNPC not to run like if you like, an extension of government, but a business concern of every Nigerian. I'm sure we heard the GMD when he was speaking this morning. He said it is a company now that belongs to all Nigerians. Because when you read the PIA as part of the implementation, at some point, shares will also be put out there for Nigerians to buy shares in order that they partly own NNPC itself. And it is something that has been practiced for a very long time. For instance, I pride myself that even though I left Shell a couple of years ago in 2016, I am still a shareholder of Shell, not SPDCO. I am a shareholder of Shell globally. Today, they send me invites to be at their AGM because while I was serving there, through the bonuses that we got, we became shareholders. The same thing will happen to NNPC. In a year's time, we are not going to be talking to them as an extension of government. We are going to be talking to them as a business. And to be able to enable us buy shares into NNPC, they have to be profitable. They have to be disciplined. They have to be prudent. They have to be accountable. Everything you demand of a company that is run from a corporate governance perspective is what we expect. That's a bit I wanted to add, Chairman.
Thank you, yes. We're going to get a few questions and answers.
My name is George Onofoko, Coleman Wires and Cable. My question is directed at the IOCs and I think everybody on the other side. On the issue of practical local content, and this is where I need your help on, we have the tendency of either wanting to build capacity or in the capacity being built. And this, I think, falls back to the section here. Question is, are we there to encourage or discourage? Which is vendor registration. What we are getting nowadays is some of the IOCs have closed their window. I don't know if anybody knows that, and I think a lot have heard that grammar. Some of the IOCs are using excuses of the local content law also, and NCDMB is doing its best, but how do we solve this vendor participation to create capacity? It's a question that capacity build. If you do not encourage the vendors to even register, how do you build capacity? So we need to check.
Question, no?
No, how?
Okay, so
they should tell us how.
Okay, that's fine.
My name is Afolabi Davidson, Vice President of Octan. The panelists have alluded to the fact that there's an energy economy emerging globally that's largely dependent on decarbonization. And I wanted to ask if there's an opportunity in that area for us to invest in carbon capture and storage as one of the conditions to help us compete for investments globally. And if we can develop local technology in that area to help us fit into the emerging economy globally. Thank you.
My name is Ellen, and I'm with PET and Petroleum Technology Association of Nigeria. I'm going to address this question to Bandele, and then to the GMD. I may deviate a bit. I heard him discussing about reduction in carbon footprint. And last few weeks ago, I was at the NIC conference, the NAPE conference, and they kept talking about, Seplat was talking about reduction in carbon footprint. I have a concern. Every time I visit Port Harcourt, I go back sick because of the black suit situation in Port Harcourt. What is being done to address that issue when you talk about carbon footprint reduction? This might be coming from individuals and local people working to solve their own problems. But then what is the general perspective coming from government to solve this issue? Because with time, we'll see an increase in diseases, sicknesses that people cannot even comprehend. Right now, I, as a human being, I am suffering it. Because every single time I visit Port Harcourt, I come back very sick. Please, what is being done about this?
Okay. We are either investor operators, and we're supposed to comply. The case of Port Harcourt, I think a lot of studies has been done by some academics. The first thing is to determine what is the source of this soot that is all over the place. And literature that we read, these are arising from quote and unquote artisanal refineries activities, where they use firewood to heat the crude to create diesel. So they have their own refinery, and the only mean of heating they have, their furnace, is either to burn the hydrocarbon or to burn firewood. And the process, obviously, it generates this soot. And that's why you see it's predominantly more in Port Harcourt area than across the entire Niger Delta. This is because there's so much concentration of some of those artisanal refineries. The trouble is, and I'm not commissioned, if they are not all in the basket of the regulator, because they are informal, it's going to be difficult for them to be dealt with. But having said that, I can confirm, and I think I will be speaking on behalf of my partners, we are a compliance organization. And everybody that we do business with, we made him comply and give us commitment and indemnity for compliance. And I can confirm that all the partners do all that they need to do prudently to avoid and to play by the books in terms of complying with all environmental regulations.
Elvis had essentially one question, and although he didn't direct it to anybody, the question is about how the IOCs intend to set up the host community to address the provision in the Act. So maybe the chairman can take that.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think it's a great question, and when we meet, it's probably the most topical issue right now. As you know, in the course of enacting the PIB, this was an area we took quite an interest in. Never actually challenged the levels. What we were far more interested in was creditable administration of the host community funds, and of course the setting up of the structures, such as the appointments of settlers and all. There was one area we actually advocated for as an industry, which is getting the state governments involved. But somehow that did not make the legislation. The reason why we wanted that was because we know that in terms of intimacy with community groups and folks across the states, the state governments are in a pole position. Having said that, we still intend as much as possible to consult fully with the state structures as we set it up. As a matter of fact, right now, under the steer and leadership of our senior partner in NNPC, as an industry group, we are working together to see how we can set up these structures early enough to meet the timeline that to set up in the Act. Because this is now a law, and once you have a law, it is there to be obeyed and is there to be operationalized. So we are working quite actively to get that going. I have a very specific interest in making sure this works, because as you say, our businesses are just as good as the cooperation we get from the community groups. There was an element of the law that actually essentially was going to back out from that fund what if there is vandalization of oil infrastructure within those areas. But that's something to be looked at later. What is important right now is that we are all on the table. the likes of yourselves, because this has to be very heavily anchored on consultation. Like with everything in the industry, when funds have to be set up, the problem is never getting the funds in. This is what we essentially do quite well. If you look at the GMOUs, for example, that ourselves, Chevron, and the rest of the IOCs have going, we would always fund it. Often where the problem is the governance structures around it, the individuals who are appointed to run those funds, how they can see that nexus between what is in the funds and what is intended for, without having to be superintended by some multinational. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So just customers on the, did you want to add to this? Okay, please, when you do that, just roll into the question that Coleman asked, the cable manufacturer, right, about the closing the windows for registrations.
Okay. So thank you, Mr. Kumbo. I mean, when it comes to host community activities, it's an area, as a company, we are very, very experienced. We, like he mentioned, we do have the Global Memorandum of Understanding, which we've been using to manage our host communities, and engaging them in building capacity, making sure they are involved in our operations. So we are very pleased that some elements of that Global Memorandum of Understanding, the GMOU, is now part of what was used in coming up with the host community in the PIA. Now, in terms of managing it going forward, like I said, we have experience in that area, but we still need collaboration, as Mr. Kumba mentioned. Collaboration in the sense that, with the PIA is an act. You have to have a policy, regulation that comes out of it. We need to work with all the stakeholders to make sure that the policy and regulation that comes out of it is very clear and is, very transparent to everybody. And that's where, all the key players, the regulators, the operators, the contractors, the host communities are going to be part of helping to come up with those regulations. That's going to make sure that when we deploy it, it will give us the kind of benefits we are all looking for. So, just be on the watch out, and as the regulation comes out, that's going to help us to get us into where we want to take this in. Especially building from what we have, will we be a key player in that whole process. Now, back to my friend's comment around, why are we locking out the vendors? First of all, I'm not sure, speaking for Chevron, but I'm not sure there's any of the operators that are locking out people, but you have experience. But here's the process, see how it works. If you want to do any business with the industry, we have a portal, the NAPES portal. You go there, you register, and of course, for every opportunity that comes for any contract, it's clear that you go to that portal, you pick the list, and review that list. To the extent you're able to register on that portal, you are able to compete. Because based on what your deliverables are, based on what you can provide, based on what your services you can provide to the industry, that are required, you'll be nominated to compete with others. That's a process that we know. I don't know. My senior partner, to add to that.
Okay, I'll comment on the two. George, I'll come to you, don't worry. No, don't worry, George. Let me start with my brother on the host community. I think it's important to contextualize what we're discussing. We did mention that the PIB is anchored on 5 thematic areas: the minister, the commission, the authority, the NNPC, and the ponds. It's a plural terms, the language of the law. Those forms are 3 of them: the host community fund, the frontier exploration fund, and the midstream funds. And the language of the law is that there shall be host community fund to be set up. What that means is that the host community, unlike the commission that are inheriting an existing structure, is yet to be set up. And I know there's a lot of engagement and consultations between the legislatures, between communities, on what are the modalities that are going to be used to set up these funds and what has been done. And I'm very, very sure, and I will be very surprised if you are not yet consulted. If you are not, I'm sure they will. Secondly, it's important to understand, you say you want a sense of belonging. The law went beyond sense of belonging. It actually allows you to take the belongings of that fund. It is what it is, host community funds. Completely you dictate what you want to use it for, but it's make sure that it follows certain group of governance to meet the intention. There's a lot of debate about how that is going to be done. All I can encourage each and sundry participate in those debates. But those funds are yet to be set up. You have heard from my two partners what we are doing as an industry to comply with the law, which is to make sure that we provide for the fund. And we will do it because we are supposed to do it, we are compelled to do it, and therefore we comply with it. That I can tell you. How it's going to be utilized is based on the form and the upon operating modalities. Talking about, George, I think, you raised a fundamental issue. I really need to understand what exactly where you're coming from. What my good friend Cosmos say is a rule of thumbs. However, we as an industry, in collaboration with a lot of you, we have identified the problems in terms of categorization and the rest of them. And thanks to SIMBI and a lot of people in NCDMB, we are now coming together under the NUCOP umbrella to look at the entire qualification system so that we make sure that people, because a lot, even carpenter categorize himself as a welder. And it's very difficult. Every one of you go and say he can do everything, including designing of a human being. And it's difficult to categorize some of those things. So we are now taking a very significant look at it in collaboration with yourselves, and very soon we'll come to the major service provider, FETANs and marine operators, et cetera, we invite them to sit down to see where are the weaknesses and the shortfall so that we can correct it. But okay, we had a lot of complaints. I will talk to you after this to understand specifically where your issues were, because nobody should be able to block you, but if there's a blockage, I can tell you that it must be one or two individuals trying to create, because we do know that a lot of people went around to say, give me money, let me go and register with Shell. Shell doesn't collect money, Chevron doesn't collect money, Napian didn't collect money. But I'm sure a lot of people pay so-called consultants to register you. And that is because you choose to do that. And you have to live with the consequence of those choices. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Please, let us give the panelists a round of applause. But please. So I need to close down very quickly. I don't usually like to do these recaps, but just because the GED ended up giving us something to talk about, I would like to repeat it, that between now and 2022, FIDs will start coming back. All the other ones are grammar. That last bit is what we want to hold on to. And thank you very much.
Guagu said, I said that all FID will come back. Listen, listen to me, please. No,
it's very important. It's very important
that you get the clarity.
Clarify it.
You said that FID will come between now and 2022. That wasn't what I said. Yeah. Listen to me. Please listen. I mentioned 5 projects that were suspended.
Yeah.
Prowe, Oo, Bonga Southwest, Bonga North, Agbami Gas, Bossy, and several others. And I'm saying that most of these projects will be FID'd in 2022. Most of these projects will be FID'd in 2022.
Okay.
Not between now and 2022. A whole lot of difference. So I just don't want to. Thank you very much.
Okay. Okay. So for the sake, for the sake of good order, and to put the stamp of the panel on this, because he's GED in his office, but in this panel, I'm the chairman. So for the sake of good order, I want to endorse his own version of what he said. So on that note, ladies and gentlemen, is that not good for us? It is even too much for us. Just give us a proportion of that, and we'll be happy. I'll be back,
That's all we can take on this episode. I'm Ehi-Omoike. Thank you for watching.